9 Golden Age Hollywood graves that are haunted. The cameras have stopped rolling, but the stories haven't ended. Across Los Angeles, behind wrought iron gates and marble facades, lie the final resting places of Hollywood's golden icons. But for some of these luminaries, final may be the wrong word entirely. There's something different about celebrity graves, revealed a longtime groundskeeper at a Hollywood cemetery. Regular folks rest. Famous people? They linger. It's like they can't quite accept the show is over, or maybe we won't let them go. Either way, certain plots here have activity that can't be easily explained. Tonight we explore 9 of Hollywood's most persistently active grave sites, final resting places where staff, visitors, and paranormal investigators consistently report unexplained phenomena that suggest Golden Age stars may still be making their presence known long after their final curtain call.
It's a very happy time. I'm happy to be back. As I said, it's my hometown.
Yes. Well, you're a happy girl now.
Marilyn Monroe, the restless icon. In the small, elegant Westwood Village Memorial Park, surrounded by quiet residential streets and UCLA campus buildings, lies Hollywood's most iconic blonde. Since her mysterious death in 1962, Marilyn Monroe's crypt has become both pilgrimage site and paranormal hotspot, a place where the boundary between fan devotion and genuine supernatural phenomena becomes increasingly blurred. She was Hollywood's most tragic icon, and her crypt is never silent, confirmed a security guard who has worked night shifts at the cemetery for over 15 years. Most famous graves receive visitors, flowers, occasional whispered words. Marilyn's is different. There's a persistent energy there that doesn't dissipate even when the grounds are empty and locked. Something remains active regardless of human presence. This activity manifests in consistent, specific ways that have been reported by numerous unrelated visitors and staff. Cold spots, sudden, localized drops in temperature with no meteorological explanation, are frequently reported directly in front of her crypt, even on the warmest Los Angeles afternoons. More intriguingly, many visitors report the distinct scent of Chanel No. 5, Monroe's signature perfume, wafting near the marble wall when no one wearing fragrance is present. Visitors report cold spots, phantom perfume, and a presence that feels watched, explained a tour guide who regularly brings groups to the cemetery. What's particularly convincing is when someone who knows nothing about Marilyn's perfume preference suddenly asks, "Does anyone else smell Chanel?" It happens at least once a month, always near her crypt, always when there's no obvious source. The most disturbing reports come from security personnel working overnight shifts. Multiple guards, interviewed separately over different years, have reported hearing soft, muffled sounds emanating from the wall where Monroe's crypt is located, sounds that some describe as weeping or quiet conversation, though no distinct words are discernible. One guard claimed he heard soft crying from inside the wall, revealed the cemetery administrator. He was a former military man, not prone to imagination or exaggeration. He submitted his resignation the next day, refusing to work nights again. When pressed, he would only say, "Some sadness shouldn't be witnessed. It's too private." Paranormal researchers suggest that if Monroe's spirit does linger, it might reflect the circumstances of both her life and death. Known for her fear of being alone and her desire for connection, Monroe died in isolation under circumstances that continue to generate controversy and conspiracy theories. This combination of emotional vulnerability and unresolved endings creates what some parapsychologists call a perfect storm for spiritual activity. They say Marilyn never liked being alone, and maybe she still isn't, noted a medium who has conducted several sanctioned after-hours investigations at the cemetery. The energy doesn't feel threatening or negative, just unsettled and seeking connection. It's consistent with someone who never found peace in life, continuing to seek it after death. Whether these experiences reflect genuine paranormal activity or the powerful psychological impact of Monroe's enduring cultural significance, her crypt remains one of Hollywood's most active locations for reported phenomena, a final resting place where the star who never found peace in life seems equally restless in death. Rudolph Valentino, the wandering lover. At Hollywood Forever Cemetery, among the industry's most ornate monuments and mausoleums, the grave of silent film's greatest lover has generated consistent reports of unusual activity for nearly a century. Rudolph Valentino, The Italian-born star who defined romantic masculinity for the 1920s before his untimely death at age 31 appears to have maintained his restless, passionate nature long after his physical form was laid to rest. Valentino died young, but his ghost grew old, observed a groundskeeper who has maintained the cemetery grounds for over 2 decades. Most paranormal activity stays consistent over time. With Valentino, witnesses from the 1930s through today describe seeing the same figure, a man in period clothing moving with purpose through the cemetery grounds, always near his final resting place, but never quite at rest. The paranormal activity associated with Valentino's grave falls into 2 distinct categories. The first centers around the famous Lady in Black, a mysterious veiled woman who began visiting his grave shortly after his death in 1926 and continues in various incarnations to this day. While the original visitor's identity sparked decades of speculation, the tradition she began has evolved into a phenomenon that some believe creates a psychic channel strengthening Valentino's presence at the site. Every year, a mysterious Lady in Black visits his grave, confirmed a Hollywood historian who has documented the tradition. What's interesting is that even when no official lady is performing the ritual, security cameras occasionally capture glimpses of a dark-clothed figure approaching the grave during off hours when the cemetery is closed. When guards investigate, no one is there, but fresh flowers sometimes appear without explanation. The second and more directly supernatural category involves sightings of a male figure that matches Valentino's distinctive appearance and mannerisms. Security personnel working night shifts have repeatedly reported glimpsing a man in dark clothing with a cape or long coat moving purposefully through the garden areas near Valentino's resting place, only to disappear when approached. And at night, workers say they've seen a man in a cape vanish behind the mausoleum gates, said a paranormal investigator who has interviewed multiple witnesses. The descriptions remain consistent across decades. A dark-haired man of medium height wearing clothing from the 1920s, moving with the distinctive posture and gait that Valentino was known for. He's most often seen near the cathedral mausoleum where he's interred, particularly around the anniversary of his death in August. Technical anomalies further suggest unusual energy around Valentino's grave. Electrical disturbances, malfunctioning cameras, draining batteries, flickering lights, occur with unusual frequency near his final resting place. Doors to the mausoleum sometimes open or close without apparent cause, particularly during quiet periods when few visitors are present. Lights flicker, doors creak, noted a security supervisor. We've replaced the wiring, checked for drafts, looked for logical explanations, but it happens consistently in that specific area, particularly around his birthday and death anniversary. Maintenance staff joke that he's still making dramatic entrances and exits. Paranormal researchers suggest that Valentino's continued presence might reflect his sudden, untimely death at the height of his fame. Cut down by peritonitis before he had reached his full potential, the star received one of the most dramatic funerals in Hollywood history, with thousands of fans creating near riots in their attempts to pay respects. This combination of sudden transition, unfinished business, and intense public emotion creates what some parapsychologists consider ideal conditions for spiritual imprints to remain active. The Latin lover isn't resting, he's wandering, suggested the medium who has investigated the site. The energy doesn't feel trapped or suffering, more like someone still taking curtain calls, enjoying the continuing attention, and perhaps looking for the recognition that was cut short too soon. It's theatrical, dramatic, and very much in keeping with his persona. Whether psychological projection or genuine supernatural phenomena, Valentino's continuing presence at Hollywood forever represents one of the industry's most enduring ghost stories, a narrative that, like the star himself, refuses to fade quietly into history.
I suppose you can do better.
That is correct.
Clifton Webb, The Watchful Presence. Nearby, in the same storied grounds of Hollywood Forever Cemetery, lies the crypt of Clifton Webb, a star whose distinctive screen persona as the acerbic, sophisticated intellectual seems to continue in his afterlife presence. Known for roles like Waldo Lydecker in Laura and Mr. Belvedere, Webb projected an aura of cold perfection and judgmental observation that visitors to his gravesite report feeling to this day. Best known for Laura and his icy on-screen charm, began the cemetery tour guide before lowering her voice. Webb's presence is less theatrical than Valentino's, but in some ways more directly felt. He doesn't appear visually as often. Instead, People experience him as a palpable sense of being observed and evaluated, a perfect continuation of the characters that made him famous. The phenomena reported near Webb's crypt align remarkably with his persona. Visitors consistently describe sudden, localized cold spots that seem to move deliberately rather than remaining stationary. These cold areas are often accompanied by a distinct sensation of pressure, an almost physical feeling of someone standing in close proximity despite no visible presence. Webb's crypt is said to emit cold bursts of air, and visitors claim to feel a sudden pressure on their chest, as if someone is standing right behind them, explained a paranormal researcher who has documented multiple accounts. What's particularly interesting is that these sensations often occur when someone makes an error about Webb's career or misidentifies one of his films. It's as if his perfectionist nature continues even in death, correcting mistakes and maintaining his exacting standards. Unlike the emotional warmth that characterizes reports around Marilyn Monroe's crypt or the romantic energy associated with Valentino, the presence at Webb's grave strikes many as intellectual and somewhat judgmental, a consciousness that observes with detachment rather than seeking emotional connection. Psychics who have conducted investigations at the site report receiving consistent impressions of a personality concerned with legacy and proper recognition. This aligns with historical accounts of Webb as someone deeply invested in how he was perceived both personally and professionally, with an almost obsessive attention to detail and presentation. Psychics believe he never left because he refuses to be forgotten, noted a medium who has conducted sessions near his crypt. The energy communicates a concern with how he's remembered and portrayed, a continuing desire to ensure his contributions to film aren't overlooked. Unlike spirits who linger due to trauma or unfinished business, this presence seems to remain by choice, still curating his legacy from beyond. This continued attention to his cultural footprint would be consistent with Webb's life choices. He never married, lived with his mother until her death at 91, and devoted himself entirely to his career and public image. With few close personal connections, but a passionate commitment to his artistic legacy, Webb's attachment to how future generations perceive him might naturally extend beyond physical death. While less dramatic than some Hollywood hauntings, the consistent reports of Webb's watchful presence suggest a personality whose core concerns transcended physical boundaries. A star who remains as attentive to his reputation in death as he was in life.
Well, then, if you'll be real quiet, I'll see if I can get the little boy to say something. Well, how are you today, Tommy? Oh, I'm feeling fine, thanks.
Lon Chaney, Sr., the hidden performer. Deep within the ornate corridors of Forest Lawn, Glendale's great mausoleum lies a crypt with no name, the deliberately unmarked resting place of Lon Chaney Sr., the man of 1,000 faces. Famous for his groundbreaking transformations in silent film classics like The Phantom of the Opera and The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Chaney requested anonymity in death. This final act of disappearance behind yet another mask seems to have created ideal conditions for one of Hollywood's most persistent hauntings. The man of 1,000 faces is buried in a secret, unmarked tomb, confirmed a longtime Forest Lawn employee. His son, Lon Chaney Jr., explained that his father wanted no name on his crypt because he believed his work should stand on its own. But that anonymity seems to have created a restless energy, as if in erasing his name, some essential part of him remains unresolved. Unlike many celebrity graves where phenomena centered directly around the marked burial location, the activity associated with Chaney spreads throughout the corridors of the mausoleum. Security guards and maintenance personnel report a consistent pattern of unsettling sounds, low groans, shuffling footsteps, and occasional whispers that seem to follow visitors through the ornate hallways, particularly after sunset. Visitors have heard groaning, scraping, and whispers in the mausoleum hallways, especially around Halloween, noted a security supervisor who has worked night shifts at Forest Lawn for over a decade. What makes these reports compelling is their consistency and specificity. Different people, often tourists who know nothing about Chaney being buried there, describe nearly identical experiences. Shuffling footsteps that sound slightly irregular, as if someone with a physical impairment is following them just out of sight. This detail, the distinctive uneven gait, aligns with Chaney's renowned physical performances. Throughout his career, he became famous for his ability to transform his body completely, often portraying characters with significant physical differences or disabilities. His performances frequently involved altered walking patterns, twisted postures, and physical transformations achieved through self-inflicted discomfort rather than camera tricks. Technical anomalies further suggest unusual energy within the mausoleum. Cameras and recording equipment frequently malfunction in specific corridors near Cheney's unmarked crypt. Batteries drain unexpectedly. Digital photos sometimes contain unexplainable blurs or distortions when no movement was present during shooting. These technical disruptions cluster in particular areas at specific times, defying random explanation. They say Lon never stopped performing. He just changed stages, suggested a paranormal researcher who has conducted several investigations at the location. The activity doesn't feel threatening, more like someone still practicing their craft, still experimenting with forms and expressions. It's as if the energy that drove his physical transformations in life continues to shift and adapt in death, unable to settle into a single, final form. This continued shape-shifting would align perfectly with Cheney's artistic approach. Known for his belief that physical transformation was the key to reaching emotional truth, he viewed his body as a malleable instrument for storytelling. This fundamental understanding of identity as fluid and performative might naturally extend into whatever consciousness remains, a spirit still exploring the boundaries between appearance and essence. The unmarked nature of Cheney's tomb adds another layer to the haunting. With no visible name to anchor his memory, the spiritual energy seems to move freely throughout the mausoleum, rather than remaining tethered to a specific location. This mobility creates what some parapsychologists call a roaming haunting, phenomena that follow patterns but aren't restricted to a single point in space. The anonymity he chose in death seems to have created freedom in whatever remains, observed the medium who has investigated the site. Without the anchor of his name, the energy moves like his characters did in life, shifting forms, appearing and disappearing, always just at the edge of perception. It's perhaps the most artistically appropriate haunting in Hollywood, the man of 1,000 faces, still changing form, still performing, but now from beyond the final curtain.
Please,
George Reeves, the fallen Superman. At Mountain View Cemetery in Altadena, a modest marker bears the name of George Reeves, television's original Superman, whose life ended in controversy and whose death remains shrouded in competing theories. Found dead from a gunshot wound in 1959 under circumstances officially ruled suicide but widely questioned, Reeves left behind not just an iconic role, but a legacy of unresolved questions that seem to fuel continuing activity around his final resting place. TV's original Superman, found dead from a mysterious gunshot, noted a cemetery historian. The official ruling was, but persistent theories about murder or accidental death have never been fully laid to rest. Neither, it seems, has Reeves himself. The phenomena reported at Reeves's grave are both consistent and specifically tied to the circumstances of his death. Multiple independent visitors have described hearing a sudden, sharp sound like a gunshot when standing near his marker, particularly during quiet evening hours. This acoustic anomaly occurs even when the cemetery is otherwise empty and no external sounds are evident. Visitors to his grave report hearing a loud bang, followed by the sensation of a cape brushing past, confirmed a groundskeeper who has maintained the area for many years. These experiences aren't vague feelings or general creepiness, they're specific, detailed sensations that directly connect to who Reeves was and how he died. The sound is always described the same way, a single sharp report followed by absolute silence. Even more distinctive is the physical sensation reported by numerous visitors, a brief pressure or brushing feeling across their shoulders and back that many describe as reminiscent of fabric moving past them, like a heavy cloth being drawn quickly across their upper body. Given Reeves's iconic role as Superman, complete with flowing cape, this tactile experience creates an unmistakable connection to his most famous character. Technical equipment deployed by paranormal researchers has captured unusual data at the site. Audio recordings sometimes contain unexplained sounds that don't match the ambient environment at the time of recording. Electromagnetic field, EMF detectors, register sharp spikes that occur without corresponding environmental causes. Temperature fluctuations occur in patterns rather than gradual shifts, suggesting non-natural causes. Some say he still seeks justice, even in death, explained a paranormal investigator who has documented the site extensively. The energy doesn't feel at rest or peaceful. It has an active quality, as if something remains unresolved. This aligns perfectly with the circumstances of his death, the competing theories, the unanswered questions, the sense that the official explanation doesn't fully account for all the evidence. The persistent controversy surrounding Reeves's death creates what parapsychologists consider ideal conditions for spiritual restlessness, whether as officially ruled or the result of foul play, as many have suggested. The lack of clear resolution leaves a narrative gap that neither allows for justice if he was murdered, nor peace if he took his own life. The persistent activity seems to reflect the unresolved nature of his passing, suggested the medium who has conducted investigations at the site. Energy follows thought, and with so many people still questioning what really happened that night, those questions create a continuous loop of uncertainty. If Reeves himself departed with unresolved feelings about his death, that would only intensify the effect. What makes the Reeves haunting particularly poignant is how it continues his life's central irony. A man forever associated with a superhero character who was ultimately powerless to save himself. This tension between the immortal, invulnerable Superman and the all-too-human fate of the actor who portrayed him creates a narrative dissonance that seems to reverberate beyond the grave. There's something almost mythic about his haunting, observed a cultural historian specializing in television history. Superman was about justice, truth, and protection from harm. All elements that were potentially violated in Reeves's death if the murder theories have merit. That his spirit might continue seeking the justice he represented on screen creates a powerful continuation of his life's central storyline.
What's the matter? What's happened? Do you remember that round-robin letter we all sent each other?
Yeah.
Peg Entwistle, The Divided Presence. Unlike most Hollywood hauntings that center around burial sites, the story of Peg Entwistle presents a unique case. A spirit divided between her physical resting place in Ohio and the Hollywood landmark that became forever associated with her tragic end. The young actress who leapt to her death from the Hollywood sign in 1932 has created one of the industry's most active hauntings, despite her body resting thousands of miles from California. She leapt from the Hollywood sign in 1932. Her body went home. Her spirit didn't, explained a Hollywood historian. This creates what paranormal researchers call a split haunting, phenomena occurring in multiple locations connected to the same individual, suggesting that consciousness can remain active in places of emotional significance regardless of where physical remains are interred. The primary location associated with Entwistle's haunting is, unsurprisingly, the Hollywood sign itself, particularly the area near the H, from which she jumped after a series of career disappointments. Hikers, park rangers, and visitors to the area have reported consistent sightings of a woman in 1930s style white or light-colored clothing, often described as moving with distress or agitation before disappearing. Though she's buried in Ohio, her ghost is seen near the sign, in white, pacing, lost, unfinished, confirmed a park ranger who has worked in the area for over a decade. The descriptions remain remarkably consistent across different witnesses and time periods. A young blonde woman in period clothing who appears disoriented, moving as if searching for something. The sightings cluster around the anniversary of her death in September, but occur throughout the year. What makes these sightings particularly convincing is their occurrence among people with no prior knowledge of Entwistle's story. Tourists who later research the sign's history after witnessing the apparition are often shocked to discover the close match between what they saw and historical descriptions of Entwistle. This pattern of uninformed witnesses reporting highly specific details suggests phenomena beyond mere suggestion or expectation. More surprisingly, paranormal activity also occurs at her actual burial site in Oak Hill Cemetery, Ohio, creating a bi-coastal haunting that reflects her divided life and death. Visitors to her grave report subtle but consistent anomalies, particularly involving small objects like flowers or stones left as memorials. Visitors to her grave have found rocks moved into strange patterns, as if someone's still trying to send a message, noted a groundskeeper from the Ohio cemetery. People leave small stones as remembrances, following the Jewish tradition, even though Entwistle wasn't Jewish. What's unusual is how these stones are frequently found rearranged into patterns, sometimes lines or circles, occasionally more complex arrangements that don't occur naturally and couldn't be attributed to weather or animals. Electronic phenomena also occur at both locations. Cameras malfunction or capture unexplainable artifacts, Batteries drain rapidly. Recording devices pick up whispered sounds that don't match ambient environmental noise. These technical disruptions happen with unusual frequency at both the Hollywood sign and the Ohio gravesite, creating a paranormal connection between locations separated by thousands of miles. Paranormal researchers suggest that Entwistle's divided haunting reflects the fractured nature of her life and death. A promising actress who found success on Broadway before moving to Hollywood, her suicide came after career disappointments left her stranded between two worlds: the New York stage, where she had flourished, and the California film industry, where she had struggled to establish herself. Her energy seems divided because her life was divided, observed the medium who has investigated both locations. The Hollywood sign represents her broken dreams and final despair, while her Ohio grave connects to her roots and family. This split between aspiration and origin, between where she died and where she rests, creates a consciousness that can't fully resolve into a single location. What makes Entwistle's haunting particularly resonant is how it embodies the darker side of Hollywood dreams, the countless young talents who came seeking fame and found disappointment instead. Her continuing presence serves as a physical manifestation of the industry's less glamorous reality, where for every success story, countless others end in obscurity or tragedy. Her haunting feels like an unfinished conversation with Hollywood itself, suggested a film historian. She represents all those who came with dreams that the industry couldn't or wouldn't fulfill. Her continuing presence at the sign, the very symbol of Hollywood aspiration, creates a powerful reminder of the human cost behind the glamour and spectacle of the entertainment business.
Well, this is sort of silly.
Thelma Todd, The Suspicious Death. In Pierce Brothers' Westwood Village Memorial Park, not far from Marilyn Monroe's famous crypt, lies the niche containing Thelma Todd, a brilliant comedic actress of the 1930s whose promising career ended with her mysterious death in 1935. Found in her car under circumstances that have never been fully explained, Todd's passing generated conspiracy theories involving organized crime, business disputes, and personal vendettas. This unresolved ending seems to have created one of Hollywood's most actively angry hauntings. Found dead in her car under suspicious circumstances, and her spirit is angry, confirmed a security guard who has worked night shifts at the cemetery. Unlike some of our more melancholy or theatrical presences, the energy around Todd's niche has a quality of indignation or outrage, as if something fundamentally unjust remains unaddressed. The phenomena reported near Todd's final resting place have a distinctly confrontational quality. Visitors and staff describe sudden, localized cold spots that don't dissipate normally, but instead seem to follow people moving through the area. These cold areas are often accompanied by what many describe as a sense of being closely watched or even quietly judged. Staff say the air near her niche turns icy, and that her face appears in reflective surfaces nearby, explained a tour guide who regularly brings groups to the cemetery. What makes these experiences particularly unsettling is their aggressive quality. While most cemetery phenomena feel passive or observational, witnesses describe Todd's presence as actively attempting to communicate, trying to engage rather than simply manifest. The most frequently reported visual phenomena involve reflective surfaces near her niche, the marble facing of nearby crypts, glass flower holders, or visitors' phone screens. Multiple independent witnesses have described seeing a woman's face briefly appear in these surfaces, always from peripheral vision and always disappearing when looked at directly. The descriptions consistently match Todd's distinctive features, particularly her expressive eyes. Electronic equipment behaves unusually near her resting place. Digital cameras capture orbs or unexplained light artifacts. Audio recordings contain whispered sounds that don't match the ambient environment. Most tellingly, battery-powered devices drain at accelerated rates in her immediate vicinity, sometimes losing full charges within minutes rather than hours. Some believe she was murdered, and she's still trying to tell us, noted a paranormal researcher who has conducted multiple investigations at the site. The historical context makes these phenomena particularly meaningful. Todd died under deeply suspicious circumstances that were never adequately resolved. The official ruling was accidental carbon monoxide poisoning, but evidence suggested possible foul play connected to her business dealings or personal relationships. Todd's death occurred at a critical juncture in both her career and personal life. She had recently opened a successful restaurant that put her in contact with organized crime figures during Prohibition. She was engaged in business disputes with several powerful individuals. She had relationships that had ended problematically. Any of these factors could have contributed to foul play that was subsequently covered up by authorities unwilling or unable to challenge powerful interests. The energy communicates a sense of injustice and interrupted potential, explained the medium who has investigated the site. Unlike spirits who seem confused or unaware of their passing, this presence feels acutely aware of having been wronged. The communication attempts seem focused on establishing what really happened, rather than simply making her presence known. What makes Todd's haunting particularly significant is how it connects to broader patterns of women in early Hollywood, whose voices were silenced and whose suspicious deaths were inadequately investigated. From Todd to Jean Harlow to Marilyn Monroe, the industry has a troubling history of beautiful, talented women who died young under circumstances that were quickly closed without thorough examination. Her haunting feels like a demand for retrospective justice, observed a film historian specializing in Hollywood's golden age. It's not just about her individual case, but about the broader pattern of powerful men controlling narratives and covering up inconvenient truths. Her continued presence serves as a reminder that these historical injustices remain unresolved, their effects continuing to reverberate through time. Virginia Rappe, The Scandal That Never Died. Within Hollywood Forever Cemetery lies a grave that connects to one of the industry's earliest and most devastating scandals, the final resting place of Virginia Rappe, the young actress whose death following a party hosted by comedy star Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle in 1921 ended his career and fundamentally changed Hollywood's relationship with public morality. The controversial circumstances of her passing and the media frenzy that followed seem to have created a haunting defined by confusion and ongoing distress. She died after attending Fatty Arbuckle's infamous party, and the scandal never died, explained a cemetery historian. Rappe's death became the entertainment industry's first major morality scandal, with headlines worldwide speculating about what happened in that hotel room. The truth was likely more complex than either the prosecution's claims of assault or the defense's dismissal of her as a party girl with health problems. This unresolved narrative seems to have created a particularly troubled spiritual energy. The phenomena reported at Rappe's gravesite have a distinctly emotional quality. Visitors frequently describe hearing unexplained sobbing or crying that doesn't match any visible source in the cemetery. These sounds have been reported by multiple independent witnesses, often people unfamiliar with Rappe's story, who only learn the historical context after describing their experience to staff. Her grave is visited by people who report unexplained sobbing, camera malfunctions, and overwhelming dread, confirmed a groundskeeper who maintains the area. What makes these experiences particularly convincing is their consistency across different types of visitors. Skeptics and believers alike report the same phenomena, a sense of profound sadness that seems to emanate from the grave itself, often accompanied by technical anomalies that defy logical explanation. These technical disruptions form the second category of phenomena associated with Rappe's grave. Cameras frequently malfunction when aimed directly at her headstone. Batteries drain unexpectedly. Digital photos contain unusual artifacts or distortions that don't appear in images of surrounding areas. These equipment failures happen with unusual frequency and specificity, clustering around her burial site while leaving nearby graves unaffected. The most disturbing aspect of Rappe's haunting is the emotional impact reported by visitors. Many describe a sudden, overwhelming sense of dread or despair that doesn't match their prior emotional state, a feeling so intense that some have had to leave the area immediately. This affective component suggests energy capable of influencing the emotional states of the living, a phenomenon parapsychologists call emotional imprinting. They say she's trapped in the moment that ruined her name, noted a paranormal researcher who has documented the site. Historical context makes this haunting particularly tragic. Rappe became fodder for sensationalistic headlines that alternatively portrayed her as an innocent victim or a promiscuous party girl whose own lifestyle caused her death. The truth of her as a person was lost in the media frenzy that followed. The available evidence suggests Rappe died from peritonitis caused by a ruptured bladder, but whether this resulted from assault by Arbuckle, as initially claimed, or from chronic cystitis exacerbated by alcohol consumption, as his defense argued, remains historically contested. After 3 trials, Arbuckle was ultimately acquitted, but his career was destroyed, and Rapp's reputation was posthumously shattered by defense strategies that questioned her character and morality. The energy feels caught in a loop of confusion and distress, explained the medium who has investigated the site. Unlike some spirits who seem aware of their situation, this presence feels disoriented, still processing the trauma of what happened and the subsequent destruction of her reputation. The communication attempts seem less about establishing truth and more about expressing ongoing emotional pain. What makes Rapp's haunting particularly poignant is how it connects to broader patterns of victim blaming and character assassination that continue in modern celebrity scandals. Her posthumous treatment, having her morality questioned to defend a powerful man, created a template that would be repeated countless times throughout Hollywood history. Her continuing presence serves as a reminder of how easily women's stories can be rewritten to protect powerful interests, observed a cultural historian specializing in early Hollywood. The distress that visitors feel at her grave reflects not just her individual tragedy, but the broader pattern of women whose truths are obscured by more powerful narratives. Her haunting feels like an unhealed wound in Hollywood's collective consciousness. Jean Harlow, The Platinum Connection. In the Great Mausoleum of Forest Lawn, Glendale, behind an imposing bronze door marked simply Harlow, lies Hollywood's original blonde bombshell, Jean Harlow, who died in 1937 at just 26 years old at the height of her fame. Her tragic early death from kidney failure shocked the industry and devastated her fans. But what makes her final resting place particularly active is its connection to another mysterious Hollywood death, that of her second husband, Paul Byrne, who died under suspicious circumstances in their home just months after their wedding. The original blonde bombshell died at just 26, and her final resting place, began the cemetery guide, always cold. Visitors report sudden nausea, lights dimming, and the sound of heels on marble when no one's there. The phenomena reported at Harlow's crypt combine physical sensations with audio-visual manifestations that seem specifically connected to her life and persona. The most consistently reported experience is a dramatic and localized temperature drop that occurs directly in front of her crypt, a cold spot so distinct and persistent that it defies normal environmental explanations, remaining present even on the warmest California days. Always cold, confirmed a security guard who regularly patrols the mausoleum. What makes this particular cold spot unusual is its precision and persistence. Most environmental temperature variations dissipate or move with air currents. This remains fixed exactly in front of her crypt, creating what feels almost like walking through a doorway into a refrigerated room, with a distinct boundary between normal ambient temperature and the unexplained cold. Visitors also report distinctive auditory phenomena, the rhythmic clicking sound of high heels on marble flooring when no one visible is walking nearby. These sounds follow specific patterns, approaching Harlow's crypt and then retreating, sometimes circling the immediate area before fading. Multiple witnesses have described the same acoustic experience without prior knowledge of others' reports, suggesting phenomena beyond mere suggestion or expectation. Physical reactions among visitors form another category of experiences associated with Harlow's resting place. Many report sudden feelings of nausea or lightheadedness that occur only in the immediate vicinity of her crypt and dissipate upon moving away. Others describe pressure sensations in the throat or difficulty breathing, symptoms that correlate disturbingly with Harlow's final illness, which involved kidney failure, toxemia, and fluid in the lungs. Visitors report sudden nausea, lights dimming, and the sound of heels on marble, noted a paranormal researcher who has documented the site. What makes these experiences particularly compelling is how they mirror aspects of Harlow's life and death. The nausea and respiratory discomfort echo her final symptoms. The sound of heels recalls her famous glamorous persona. The cold spot might reflect how her body was reportedly packed in ice during her final illness in a desperate attempt to reduce her fever. The most intriguing aspect of Harlow's haunting involves its apparent connection to her second husband, Paul Byrne. Found dead from a gunshot wound in their home in 1932, just 2 months after their wedding, Byrne's death was officially ruled suicide, but generated persistent theories about possible murder. This unresolved tragedy seems to have created a connected energy between Harlow's crypt and locations associated with Byrne. Some believe her energy is tied to Paul Byrne, the husband who died mysteriously just steps from where she once slept, explained the medium who has investigated both locations. There appears to be an energetic corridor between her burial site and the house they briefly shared, with similar phenomena reported at both locations. This suggests consciousness capable of maintaining connections across physical space, perhaps reflecting unresolved emotions about his death that she carried until her own passing 5 years later. Paranormal researchers suggest that if Harlow's consciousness does remain active, it might reflect the incompleteness of her life and career. Cut down at 26 at the peak of her fame, with unanswered questions surrounding her husband's death and her own identity evolving beyond the blonde bombshell image, Harlow represents potential interrupted, a life and career that ended mid-story rather than reaching natural conclusion. The energy doesn't feel trapped or suffering, observed the medium. It feels more like a presence still processing, working through the sudden transition from vibrant life to unexpected ending. Given her youth and the unresolved circumstances surrounding Byrne, this continuing activity makes emotional sense. Some transitions require more integration than others, particularly when they occur without warning or preparation. What makes Harlow's haunting particularly significant is how it connects to Hollywood's pattern of young stars burning brightly and extinguishing early, creating a legacy defined as much by what might have been as by what actually was. Her continuing presence serves as a reminder of the human costs behind the glamorous facades of the studio system, where young talents were often exploited and discarded without regard for their well-being. As we consider these 9 restless spirits of Hollywood's golden age, patterns emerge that suggest their continued activity isn't random, but connected to specific unresolved aspects of their lives and deaths. From suspicious endings and interrupted careers to shattered reputations and enduring mysteries, these hauntings seem to reflect both personal trauma and broader cultural wounds that remain unhealed in our collective consciousness. Hollywood created these larger-than-life personas, observed paranormal researcher Dr. Elaine Marcus, who has studied celebrity grave sites for over 2 decades. The public projected immense emotional energy onto these figures, creating connections that might transcend physical death. Add unresolved endings, suspicious circumstances, or tragic early departures, and you have perfect conditions for what parapsychologists call persistent conscious energy, the continuation of identity beyond biological function. What makes these particular hauntings especially compelling is how consistently the reported phenomena align with each star's specific life circumstances and personality. Marilyn Monroe's perfume and weeping reflect her fear of loneliness. Valentino's cape-wearing figure maintains his romantic image. Clifton Webb's judgmental presence continues his perfectionism. These aren't generic ghost stories, but experiences that bear the distinctive signatures of specific individuals. Cemetery workers who encounter these phenomena regularly have developed their own philosophies about the activities they witness. Many view themselves not just as caretakers of physical memorials, but as guardians of ongoing presences that require respect and occasional accommodation. We see ourselves as custodians of both their resting places and their restless energies, explained a longtime groundskeeper at Hollywood Forever who requested anonymity. Most of us have experienced things we can't explain, but we've learned to coexist peacefully with these presences. We acknowledge them. We treat their spaces with respect. We understand that for some, the final curtain may not have truly fallen. This perspective reflects a more nuanced understanding of death and consciousness than mainstream science typically acknowledges, an approach that views the boundary between life and death as more permeable than absolute. For those who work among these active burial sites, such phenomena have become an accepted, if rarely discussed, aspect of their professional reality. Whether you interpret these experiences through a spiritual, psychological, or energy-based framework, their consistency and specificity demand serious consideration, noted Dr. Marcus. When multiple unrelated witnesses report the same phenomena in the same locations over decades, we're observing something that exists beyond individual imagination or suggestion. The question isn't whether these experiences are occurring, but what exactly they represent about consciousness and its potential continuation. Perhaps most poignant is how these hauntings reflect the incomplete or damaged narratives that define many of these stars' public stories. From Thelma Todd's suspicious death to Virginia Rapp's shattered reputation to Peg, Entwistle's interrupted dreams, many of Hollywood's most active spirits seem to be those whose narratives were wrested from their control, whose lives ended with questions unanswered or truths obscured.